G'day folks, this is Raymond Foster, hope you're doing great. I'd like to discuss in this video what I would call an anti-white meme pathogen, what has become an anti-white meme pathogen within the anti-white narrative, like many other words which used to be just normal English words which had useful everyday meanings that everybody understood. But the words have come to mean something else now in this current age. They don't have the original English meaning, so they're classified as meme pathogens in the anti-white narrative, which means we need to have some form of translation into reality, into normal, proper English for what this word is. Now, this meme pathogen, this word, is work. I've been doing a little bit of experimentation recently in regards to this meme pathogen. The concept of work in the anti-white narrative now means to be a wage slave in a debt slave system using a fiat currency instead of a standard, like a gold standard, like what we used to have back in the day. So being a slave, a wage slave in a fiat debt system, right, with no potential whatsoever to ever achieve any financial stability, you just have to constantly become poorer and poorer while everything becomes more and more expensive. Okay? In the anti-white narrative, this slavery is referred to as and called work. W-O-R-K, work, or being employed. But just more generally, people will say work or having a job, right? Now, just to get your thinking in the right ways, creating the right connections, subconscious connections, a job is a task, some action being performed, okay? Work is anything that's functional. It's not broken. It works because it's not broken, yeah? So a job is some task, some action, something that happens. That's a job, right? You got to, when you make your coffee in the morning, that's a job that needs to be done. It's work, okay? Because it works. Fundamentally, that's all work is. Work is just, are you functional? Then you're working. Yeah? Otherwise, you're fucking broken. There's something wrong with you. If you're not working, you're broken by definition. You see what I'm saying? Just trying to create some subconscious connections, throwing them out there for you, for context for this discussion. Anyway, the reason why I can say that this word, this term, this concept is definitely an anti-white meme pathogen in this day and age is because one of the responses that I have received when bringing up just this general concept of working, paid employment versus actual work, actually being a functional human being. Like, what I do is real work. I'm one of the only people I know who does real work. I actually work. I'm not a slave in a debt slave system who, does pointless, meaningless tasks, jobs for other people to become rich, to be given crumbs, to live in debt and have nothing, and be enslaved and have my children enslaved. I'm not for that. Alright, so I'm never going to be paid employed, wage slave. No, thank you. not in this fiat debt system. Maybe if we go back to a gold standard and our economy is not screwed, then it would make sense to be employed and have paid employment. But in this day and age, in this slave system, that's not real work. But in the anti-white narrative, that's what's called work, even though it doesn't work. It's broken. It's literally broken. So by definition, it doesn't work. But that's what they call work in the anti-white narrative. Having a job, going to work. It's broken, but it's called work. You see, well, they do that on purpose. It's not like, oh, it's like that's purposely done to mind fuck people, to keep you enslaved in this system, to brainwash people, yeah? Think about it. So, I do real work. Me talking right now, this video, this is real work. I'm actually working, yeah? It's got nothing to do with being paid or not being paid. Working means you're not broken, okay? If you aren't going free of the anti-white narrative, you aren't going free of anti-whiteism, this anti-white system, then guess what? You have mental illness, you're broken. You don't work. You're broken. If you're a white man or woman and you're not proud to be a white man or woman, if you have white guilt, if you think we should be sorry to some other group of people here or there or whatever, for anything that's ever happened anywhere in history, you're broken. You don't work, right? You have mental illness, you're broken. You have white guilt, that's a mental illness. That means you're broken as a white person. That means you don't work. You're broken. By definition, you can't work until you're fixed. Then you actually work, yeah? You contribute something productive to the world and your race and your people, to your descendants, to your family, to your nation. But if you have no racial consciousness and you don't support the well-being of your own folk, you're broken. You're not working on anything, yeah? In the real world, in reality. But what I'm saying, obviously in this day and age, in the anti-white narrative, in this anti-white system, this slave system, debt slave system, the word work is obviously most commonly used and understood as having paid employment or being a slave in a slave system and being given crumbs. Again, they don't call it slavery, they call it being employed, paid employment, and all this nonsense lies to make you feel better about yourself being a slave. But you know deep down, it's slavery, and you're a slave if you got a job, yeah? If you got to go do slave labor, you got to go work, you got to go put in effort just to put food in your mouth, or to pay rent to have a roof over your head. That's the literal definition of a slave. Back in the day, slaves were given free food, free homes, and they had to work in the fields. These days, they say you're not a slave, but you still have to do exactly the same as all the slaves had to do back in the day. You got to go work every day just to be able to have your roof over your head and feed yourself. That's the literal definition of slavery. But in this modern day and age, in the anti-white narrative, that's called employment. And if you don't do it, you're lazy. If you don't go willingly be a slave and submit your freedom, get down on your knees and suck the cock of the tyrants like a little bitch, right? If you don't willingly get on your knees like a bitch and get a paid employment, get a job and pay taxes and suck the dick of the government like a little faggot bitch in submission on your knees, right? If you don't willingly do that, the other slaves will say you're lazy. You just don't want to work. You don't want to pay taxes. You want to live off of my taxes and don't want to contribute. And they'll make up all these excuses just to not accept the fact that they gave up. They're cowards who want to live as slaves on their knees. No, thank you. Not a king like myself. I'm a fucking king, all right? King Foster among this crazy world of peasants and slaves, okay? And I'm just telling you now, as a king, as a free man, a sovereign being, I ain't ever gonna be nobody's slave. So that means I'm not getting a job that I get paid money to do in this slave system, where you gotta pay taxes and shit. No thanks, I'm not a fucking peasant slave. Yet people will try to be like, oh, you're just lazy, bruh. You're living off my taxes. So there's obviously a serious issue here. We need to develop language, new words, meme curatives, which we can use to talk about this dilemma and help free people from their own mental slavery. Yeah? Because if we keep saying job, work, etc., they're just lost in their delusion. They think that being a slave in this debt system is good, it's work, and that because I'm a free man, I'm a king amongst peasant slaves, trying to help people be free, rise up, stop being submissive slaves and just consenting to slavery, paying taxes. You pay taxes. Like, what the fuck, people? Why are you willingly paying a tribute to slave masters? What do you think tax is? It doesn't go to the roads, it doesn't fix nothing, it goes straight to your slave masters, to the government. And they keep it. It's literally just a slave tribute to slave masters. Otherwise, why would you have tax on your income? Why would they be taking all your shit unless you were a slave? Like, come on, people, wake the fuck up. Pretty straightforward, pretty obvious. And yeah, I'm never gonna be a slave. I'll die on my feet like a free king, a sovereign man, right? A real man. I'll never have a paid job, paid employment in this debt slave system. But when I speak about this subject, when I talk about these things, again, people are so trapped in that mental enslavement, the self-enslavement in their own minds, because of the way that language has been twisted and things have been turned into anti-white meme pathogens in the anti-white narrative in order to enslave humanity and push white erasure. So, again, we need new words, we need to develop new terminology, concepts, lexicon, which empower folk to be able to speak about these subjects in new ways, which will allow them to create those new pathways, neurological pathways, okay, carve out new subconscious ways of thinking, which become habits, everyday behaviors, which will fold over to change their way of life, change the world around them, okay? Simply by changing and creating new words, a few new definitions, which allow us to really encapsulate and articulate the phenomena before us. Okay, in a way which isn't going to be misinterpreted via the biases which are ingrained in people, conditioned in people in this slave system to keep them trapped and enslaved in this mental slave system. So if you have any suggestions, I know you're all you're very intelligent people who watch my videos. So if you have any suggestions, please throw them my way of what type of words we can use. Alright? Serve, service, contribution, working, being healthy. Alright? Something, but because again, essentially, fundamentally, it has to relate to the fact that work originally meant not like you go to somewhere and then they pay you for the shit you did for being there all day and then you go home. That's not what work used to mean. That's what it means now in this slave system, anti-white slave system. But originally, work meant like your computer works. It's not broken. You turn it on and it actually turns on. Yeah? It works. Cool, good, it works. It's not broken. Cool. Your car works. It drives. You turn the ignition, the engine starts the motor, the pistons fire, and your car drives. It works. That doesn't mean it's getting paid. It means that it works. So we need to create some new word that harks back to this original meaning of what it means to actually work, which just means not to be broken. Okay? It's got nothing else, it doesn't mean anything else. It doesn't mean being paid Doesn't mean you got, you know, you'd go here and do that, or you'd have any specific skills or anything. Work means you're not broken. You actually are operating, you function, you're not retarded. That's all work means. If you work, you ain't retarded. You're not mentally ill. That's what work actually means. So again, we need to find some word, new phrase, terminology, which harks back to that original meaning, to give life back to that original meaning, and we'll stop talking about things like this as work. We need to, and we'll call it whatever this phrase is that we agree upon using collectively to push this new way of thinking, to then again obviously have this ripple out into the world, as we have done with many things already, and actually change the way the average person thinks without them even realizing we've changed the way they think, just by introducing new words which make people think in new ways. And when people think in new ways, what happens? They live and act in new ways and become new people. So let us change the language, craft the language strategically, consciously, with wisdom and understanding, in order to affect and change the world for the better. Look forward to your suggestions, people. Take it easy.